Greetings and welcome to Agranak Studios. Today we've got a different video. This is an interview that lasts for about 40 minutes long, so grab some popcorn, maybe a drink, and buckle in. This is an interview that I did with a dear friend of mine who has a interesting story about when he was in the Navy back in the early 80s and playing D&D not only in the Navy, but also in military prison. This is my dear friend, Kelly Pajak, and hope you enjoy. Kelly motherfucking Pajak! How the hell are you?
Doing well. Good to be here, Brent.
Cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers.
Slancha. You, and I'm titling this, I don't know if it's going to end up on the thumbnail or whatever, you don't know until you initially post the stuff, but I'm calling it the 1970s punk skater kid who played D&D and blew shit up. Does that kind of like, do you resonate with that?
Have you been spying on me?
Maybe a little bit. No. When did you first hear about Dungeons and Dragons?
1979. I was junior in high school. Some kids were talking about it, and I don't even remember. I don't remember a box or anything, but we had a couple of pamphlets of rules and some basic, like, drab kind of pastel colored dice, and they were
the kind that you do the crayon on.
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
that,
and you could even see like the molding things where it broke off on it. You know, they were like really, really rudimentary dice, and so we played, and it was kind of like ad hoc because there wasn't a campaign, like what became modules and stuff like that, and it wasn't like that. There was a couple of maps and a little bit of literature. I mean, it was like. So is that like the Wild West of playing D&D? Just like go for it. Yeah, you know, we did end up playing Keep of the Borderlands, and Caves of Chaos, of course. You know, and so Classic. That became a favorite mainstay. Anytime you got together with a new group, you'd break out the Caves of Chaos. You know, and because you learned the module, and you know, and so we played it a lot. But yeah, we in high school, I was a punker kid. I skated, and so I was kind of leaned toward new wave and punk music, and all the rock and roll kids, they were playing D&D then. You know, it was like, okay, and you know, I fit right in, and so we had a lot of interesting campaigns in the beginning there.
How old were you at that time? Ish.
17.
Yeah.
In 1979.
So, okay.
Very good. 16, 17. I graduated in 80. And I graduated when I was 17.
What were your first games like? Obviously, you had just talked about like, hey, we had these, you know, what were they called? The sprues. Like that's where the dice were.
Right.
Like they were in the sprues, and you had to break them off.
Right.
And so obviously they still had some of that stuff on.
Yeah.
What were some of the feelings maybe even associated with it, or kind of the atmosphere that was brought about by playing in these first games that you remember?
It's really vague in my memory, but I remember fireballs, you know.
Of course, you have to.
and everything was evil, you know, kind of combating evil. And so we were generally better on the lighter side of the alignments, and we kind of stuck together. You know, it's like you don't want to do that, but in the very beginning we were like making sure that we were all compatible. You know, and
right.
And so yeah, we, you know, it was fighting evil basically. You know, and of course, you got to throw a dragon in there, and lots of orcs and kobolds, and Yep. It was pretty basic.
Bears and hobgoblins.
Yep.
And
Right.
the whole gambit, right?
Right. It was pretty basic.
Yeah.
And the sessions wouldn't really string together like we do now, where we play years on end, and it kind of really wasn't like that. You'd play a few sessions together, and everybody would pretty much die, and and then you'd roll up new characters, so but it kept drawing us back, and we did map, and from early on we would try to draw the map, and we made it like if you couldn't draw the map, you couldn't find your way back, and that kind of thing. So, and the DM at that time, Mark, he was really a stickler, and so if he was the type where if you fell in the water, and you were using parchment and ink, it would dilute and you'd lose your map, and that kind of stuff, and so kind of details like that were eventually kind of lost, I think, to make the game a little more fluid. So yeah, he was a stickler for details and like spell components, because they talked about spell components.
Yeah.
Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an upload, and join the conversation over at the Agranak Cult Discord.
So you were playing, this is the end of high school, and you get kind of an interest or maybe a push towards joining the military. And and you had your eye on the Navy.
The guy I spoke about, Mark, that got me into the D&D, he was the geek. He was the kid with the chemistry set and the Heath kits, and he had all that stuff, and he had chemicals and he had the best paying job of out of all of us, and so he would go to Radio Shack and get the electronics kits, and he had the electronics, the soldering iron and all that, and he kind of got us moved into the science kind of thing, and we designed a few things, and then we got into gunpowder, and so I kind of went towards. We were pyromaniacs, we were little geeky kids that were
Blowing crap
up, right, and having a good old time, and then the recruiter came to the school, and my mom had been bitching about, when are you going to get a real job, because I got tip money for my job working at the Air Force Base Commissary. Okay. And we'd spend the money right as soon as it hit our pockets, it was gone, and we made good money in tips, but I never had anything to show for it, and my mom was like, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to, and so the recruiter came to school and had pre-taken the ASVAB tests for entry into the military, and so then when the recruiter finally arrived there and he had all the books and everything, we started flipping through the pages, and I saw aviation ordnanceman, bomb builder, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I had no like focus on the future or anything, that just here and now, like immediate gratification.
Yeah. It sounded cool.
It sounded cool. And I could go home and tell my mom I got a real job. And so, I was like sitting at the dinner table. Hey, Mom, I got a job today. You did? Yeah. What are you doing? I said, I'll be loading bombs and missiles on aircraft. And she's like, what? My dad said, what branch, son? And the Navy, Dad, and he's like, all right, he was proud of me. Yeah. And but my mom was like, I knew it would get under her skin, when I said that. But anyway, it was funny, and so the rest is history.
Did you play D&D on the ship while you were there? And what ship were you on?
I requested the USS Midway. That was my first. They give you a dream sheet, and everybody was saying, oh, you don't want to go to the USS Midway. That's the USS Never Dock. Once you pull out, you never dock, you know, and because I was telling people, man, I'd love to go to Japan, and the USS Midway's home ported in Japan.
Yeah.
And so I put that at number 1 on my dream sheet, and orders came back, and I got the USS Midway. Wow. So I was like really happy,
nice.
you know. So, and we talked about D&D with some people, but I can't remember playing D&D through school. But we did, when we got on the ship, automatically we started connecting.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the tables, we'd have 15 people playing at one time. You know, it's like, you know, you can't do that. You know, it's like, it's non-productive and stuff. And so we were breaking up into little subgroups. And that's probably when we started the boxed editions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. There's the fucking box. There it is.
Yeah. So I don't remember when I got it, but yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is awesome. That's so cool. There's the red box, folks. What's left of it?
What's left of it?
Everybody's looking for those, and they're going for $400.
Really?
To $1,500 for the original in good condition, not necessarily played condition, but you know, everybody wants that like new old stock sort of pristine mint condition.
Which it's got the Elmore on it.
Yeah,
yeah,
right. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
So you were doing some illicit things on the USS Midway. That you have since paid for with time, and we'll get further into that in a little bit. Tell us about just a little bit. You don't have to incriminate yourself all over again or expose anybody. But what were some of the things you were dealing with and doing?
When you go from port to port to port, you save up your money while you're at sea, and then when you go into port, you spend all your money, right? And so, you know, you'd go into these tourist traps. Or
nothing had changed from the earlier years when you used to work at the commissary.
No.
Okay.
Well,
young, dumb, full of cum,
and all your meals are covered, and you have a place to bunk. You know, so you didn't have any expenses. You just had your money. You know, I did. Go, because I've been to the Philippines 13 times. I've been to Hong Kong 7 times. I've been to Korea 3 times. I've been so many countries. And the one I liked the most was Japan. Mm-hmm. And so, since I've been to all these countries multiple times, and to go back a little bit, we started playing D&D with a group, and it was weird because everybody else was running for not the gangplank, but it was what you disembarked off the ship and went onto the pier.
Gotcha.
And you jump in a taxi cab and you go out and start partying, you know? And
for sure.
And so everybody was doing that, and D&D was kind of tugging on us. And we started just staying on the ship. And because when you were at sea, it was 12 hours on, 12 hours off. And so you'd fit some D&D into the few hours before you had to go to bed and do all your other, you know, your coursework so you could go up in rank and everything. And so we kind of squeezed some in there. But then when we pulled into port and you'd been to the Philippines so many times, you'd stay on the ship and play D&D with the other guys that wanted to play D&D because, you know, because I wasn't much of a drinker back then. It turned out where most of the sailors, they wanted to go out. And then so you'd say, okay, well, when you pull into port, you do a day of duty, and then you'd have 4 days off in a 5-day import. And so you'd 4 days having fun, 1 day on duty. And so I started trading off my liberty days for duty days. So I'd say, I'll take your duty if you do 2 days of duty for me in Japan. because Japan is what I really loved. And so they'd go, that's a deal, you know. So I do 1 day of duty, and then I do duty for multiple people, and I'd stay on the ship the whole import playing D&D, and then I'd have extra time in Japan, you know. And so
Nice.
everybody on the ship, it was, you know, you had to be secretive about it, but everybody smoked. And then this one guy was loaning me money, and then because I'd need money for import Japan, and then I got kind of behind and I couldn't pay him back. And then he said, well, you know, do you think you could sell acid? And I go, well, yeah, I know a bunch of people that would do acid, you know, would buy it. And he goes, I'll tell you what, you can work off the money if you just sell acid for me. So I totally started selling acid, and I ended up getting even with him and having a surplus of money, and that was how I funded all my Japan imports, you know, so, but it caught up with me.
Yeah. So you ended up going down one fateful day because you had they had found you out, and tell us a little bit how that went down.
Well, unbeknownst to me, there was a guy on the ship that his cousin had OD'd on I don't know what drugs or anything, but what I had heard about somebody in his family, his cousin, had OD'd, and he had a vendetta against people doing drugs. And so he got in with the Naval Investigative Service on the ship. They're like the FBI, but in the military. And they staged a couple of controlled buys with me. And so, although they never caught me with the money, or the transaction, or the money on person, because I was too quick, I was a little skater rat, you know, and they tried to keep, I didn't know at the time, but they were on my tail, and I'm just the way I am, and sliding down the rails and moving quickly. They never caught me, you know. And
Parkour.
Yeah, I was like a little parkour rat, you know, but before parkour was a thing.
Yeah.
And so they missed the two stings that they tried to get me at, and they didn't try a third time, but they just confronted me.
Oh, okay.
And they didn't confront me off of that. I think they were still watching me. But then a friend of mine was holding a large amount of LSD, and I had given it to him when I was in Tokyo, and I said, I don't want to have this on me. I want you to take this. And he didn't do any drugs. He was a skater friend of mine, but he didn't do any drugs. And he came back to the ship, and he was selling it for me. And then he ended up taking 8 hits.
Oh, no.
And he OD'd.
Oh, man.
And it just like he was off. He was unhinged, and they had to tackle him, and they restrained him, and they took him to the base hospital, and then NIS was investigating him, and he kept saying my name over and over and over, and somebody and
Kelly Pajak.
Yeah, he did. So
Oh, no.
a guy came up to me, and because I had finished and came back from Tokyo, and I was on the ship, and this guy come up to me, he goes, Kelly, do you know a guy named Jim? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, he's in the hospital, and NIS is asking him questions, and he keeps repeating your name over and over and over, and he's like tripping out, and I'm like, what? So I took everything I had and hid everything, my little note sheets and everything, you know.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they came and they took me down, and bright lights and the whole thing, you know. And I was like, well, if Jim was involved in drugs, he would have told me, you know. So I was trying to play it off, you know.
Right.
And no.
Yeah.
They knew because they had been following me, and so it ended up. I ended up eventually admitting to it, and I was dumb. I said, they said, we'll give you half your sentence awarded if you just make it so we don't have to prove our case. And it's funny because in the military, your defense lawyer who they assign you is getting his evaluations from the judge who's judging you. And so he's not going to piss off the guy who's giving him the evaluations. He's going to try to get you pinned, for whatever crime, right, and make him look good. And so I ended up agreeing to half my sentence, and my maximum, it was 3 hits possession, 3 hits distribution, 5 hits possession, 5 hits distribution, and when they caught me, I went AWOL.
Right.
And so when I went AWOL, then they added...
Which was a major thing.
Yeah. And so I did I got a year for AWOL. So I was facing 41 years.
Wow.
And I didn't know what I was facing at the time. Yeah. All I know is they had talked to me. I denied the whole thing, and they took my license or my ID so I couldn't get off the ship. Mm-hmm. And I planned. I go, I'm out of here. And so they were probably watching me a little bit, but I snuck off the ship, and I gave them the slip, and I gave away my guitar and all the things that didn't matter to me, and my pictures and stuff that was really important to me. I gave to a trusted friend, and I said, I'll be back for these, and I went AWOL, grabbed my skateboard,
and how long were you AWOL?
6 months.
6 months.
Yep.
And that was in Japan.
Mm-hmm. I
learned the language.
That's what I wanted. Oh yeah, I
slipped into the culture.
Oh yeah, I was having a good old time. Everybody made comments. They go, "Oh, yeah, he's gone. They'll never find him," because they knew I was I was really into the culture, and
you were naturally a street rat, anyways.
Yeah.
So I mean, survival was the name of the game as a skater kid in the 70s.
They awarded me 7 years confinement and hard labor.
So they awarded you 7 years,
and I got
after all was said and done. Even though you were facing 41 years.
Yeah, that was the maximum penalty.
Okay, right. And so 7 years. And how much of that time did you do all 7 years?
My agreement was half my sentence awarded. Mm-hmm. So I had 3.5 years.
Okay.
And then with good time, I served 2 years, 9 months.
Okay. So you did well for yourself, considering.
Yes.
I mean, considering the horrible end of the spectrum when it comes to that. Let's go into that world of military prison. What kind of, I guess maybe culture shock?
For those who have been in the military, it's basically boot camp. Okay, because it's real regimented, and you're on certain timetables. You had to be certain places, and you had to go to school in boot camp. You didn't have to go to school in the brig. And I was in Japan at first, and I served some time up in Treasure Island in San Francisco, and you could even see Alcatraz. They're the 2 islands right there. Yeah. And one island was Alcatraz, one island was a military base. Mm-hmm. And then that was temporary, and they transferred us to this new long-term facility in San Diego.
Okay.
And so I went there, and I had they call it confinement at hard labor, and you were basically chipping paint, you were moving rocks, clearing out areas on the beach,
menial tasks,
and stuff like that, and I had injured my foot, and so I was in what they called sick, lame, and lazy, and it was like you had a chit that excluded you from any hard labor until whatever was resolved, and so at the time we had just moved into this new brig, and it was like a barracks setup and then it even had a library attached to it. And this library was all run down. It was dirty, trash, and the card catalog was all in disarray, and it was a mess. And so, they were setting us to work, the sick, lame, and lazy, to work in the brig, and then while everybody else was going out to working parties doing whatever, and so I got lucky. I said, I'll work in the library, sure, and so I got assigned to the library, and so it was like cake duty, and I was replacing the card catalog and getting that all back up to snuff, and then one of my basic duties was taking all the romance novels and the Western novels and putting them on a little cart and carting it through the detainee, where all the incoming prisoners were in the detainee cells until it got decided where they were going, whether they were going to court or where they were getting time or whatever. And so I was passing out books, and so I kind of found myself a home in the library.
Yeah.
So it was kind of sweet.
Nice. Now, obviously, there's a lot of time to pass when you're locked up, and as you're thinking of these things, you're going, maybe it'd be nice to get back into some Dungeons and Dragons, and so you were not only that. So obviously, just like on the ship, you are finding other people of like mind. And you're like, oh, that guy would like to play, and that guy would like to play, and that guy would like to play. Let's get together.
Yep.
Now, there were some tweaks as you're getting this group together. Tell us about how it was different, and what it was like, maybe even to gather some of these people up.
Well, not everybody was into it, and there was that stigma, the devil worship kind of, So
Satanic
some people,
panic.
and you had the religious guys in there, and then you had the people that didn't matter or whatever. But there was enough people in there that first level spells are sleep, and so we started compiling lists of the spells. That was one of the first things we did, and character classes.
Yeah.
And so when we started collaborating, and we were, man, we have enough information here where we can play this game, because as long as we're all playing by the same rules, and so we but then they didn't want us using the dice, and
because of gambling.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, they had a Yahtzee game, and I think they had like Clue or something, some basic games,
right.
And we weren't even really allowed to play them, and unless it was monitored right there, and
right.
And so then the dice were like, and so, so we were like, man, I don't know whose idea it was, but I had the library at my disposal, and so, and I had already been messing around with stuff, and like I even had ink pads, and I was passing out ink to the prisoners and stuff, for tattoos and stuff, and I had the Navy supply system at my disposal. I just had a request chit. I'd mark off on the chit what I wanted, and they were giving it to me.
Right.
And since I was checking out books, I had ink things, and then I got all this paper, and like those the desk mats. You had
Right.
calendars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, I made my world.
Yep. There
Uh-oh.
it is. It was upside down. Yeah.
I made my world
Yeah.
on one of the desk mats. It was a graph paper.
And that's original.
This is original.
You made that in the brig.
in the brig in 1982.
82.
No,
81?
83.
83. Okay. Wow.
And
Beautiful.
so it had graph paper. I'm like, oh, dude, check this out. And so I ordered this graph paper, and I got that. And so we had graph paper, you know, and then I had lamination paper where we could laminate stuff. And somebody came up with the idea of making numbered squares, and would laminate them, make all the squares the same size. And then in the Navy, they have the Dixie cup hats, right? You could take the hat and turn it inside out so it was a bowl. And then we'd have a 4-sided hat, a 6-sided hat, an 8-sided hat. You know, we had all the hats represented, you know, and you go, okay, I'm rolling to hit with my bastard sword. And they go, okay, pass me the hat. You know, you go,
roll a 20.
18. All right, you know, and so that's how we played, you know, and random numeral generation, you know, and we played for a number of months like that, you know, and so that was really revolutionary, and so we got a lot of people interested in playing the game, and you could play on weekends. And maybe a little bit in the evenings, you'd have an hour or so to play.
Right.
But you could develop characters and stuff like that. And then we had a couple of different groups playing. And so I made a campaign because we didn't have any books, you know.
Yeah.
And so everything was, you know, homebrew.
Yeah.
Right? Before homebrew, you know.
I know. Well, I think that's the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons. The spirit of what Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson and all the original forefathers of the hobby. It was all homebrew. Everything was, you know. They went from, you know, wargaming armies to let's play a guy, you know, and what's the world and so on and so forth. And so I think what you did is more like playing D&D than what people are doing today by picking up, you know, no offense to Ed Greenwood, but by picking up Forgotten Realms, or Gary, you know, no offense to Gary Gygax, picking up Greyhawk. That's awesome, and it's great that you have that luxury, but there's something to be said about, like, I'm making my own world, and this is what I want in it, and this is how I want to deal with things, and so it's that is the spirit of the game.
Yeah, without the commercial worlds, D&D wouldn't be as far as it is.
For sure.
And
absolutely.
And so, but yeah, it was what you made it.
Yeah.
The creativity was.
Yeah.
You know,
it all starts with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
You developed an awesome world. You just showed it just a second ago. Tell me about your game world. Kind of give us a Reader's Digest condensed version of maybe the different lands, the different features that you've got here, what the different color coordinations mean, maybe what some of the races are, and what I'd love to do, with your permission, is to take a picture of this and offer it to my patrons on my Patreon so that they can see it. And then if you remember the map that I made based off of this for you, which is that was made on Incarnate, because I was so inspired by what you had done here. It's such a beautiful piece of history, I think. But I'd like to share it if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So tell us about your world, what it's called, the name, as much as you can recall off the top of your head.
Well, first off, this is Japan right here. I had to put Japan in there.
Right.
So.
But is it called Japan?
No. I cannot recall.
Yeah, without the notes.
I would have to.
Like,
yeah.
We're talking.
But
40
so
years.
ninja, there were two family dynasties of ninja that came from there, and this is I remember this was the Barons of Conjecture, and have volcanic peaks right here. somewhere in these mountain ranges here, I had winged folk, and we had elves and dwarves and humans, and the winged folk. But basically, when
Wait! No love for the halflings, the hobbits?
no, I didn't. I didn't play the whole map. I played only down here in the Barrens of Conjecture.
Okay.
And it revolved around a city called Wayne, the city of origin, and it had these elder types that had it like a council of elders, and they determined everything, and it basically kind of like politics now. They were pitting. Oh yeah, and they're barbarians too, a barbarian race, and so it pitted the barbarian race against all the other races, and you would go, and well, it was a little spoiler, but it was there was a portal that you came across, and it transported you to the city of Wayne. City of Wayne isn't on the map, but
right.
you'd go there, and through the campaign, basically, you were trying to the people that were transported through there were part of this city or the outlying areas around the city, and there was a different atmosphere where it was lighter,
right.
And so you had your strength was a little bit stronger because it was lighter, and so we were toying with kind of sci-fi stuff
a little
too.
sci-fi,
right.
No, that's rad.
And so
that's rad.
And you basically had to learn. I made up glyphs where they stood for letters, and if you through the campaign you would find these different glyphs, and they would almost explain what the word was, and so you'd know the word, and then you could figure out what the runes were.
Right.
In these glyphs, and so then you could start piecing together the language, and then you had clues, and so it was pretty cool. And it had a little intrigue, and then you could eventually teleport back out as soon as you figured out the glyphs, and so it was pretty cool. And this is 1983.
Yeah.
You know, this is way back.
And you were reading a lot of like Fritz Leiber and all of that.
Yep.
And
Fafhrd and Grey Mouser
and were you reading? I mean, obviously being a librarian, you have all access to this, and any downtime, it's either D&D or you're reading fantasy novels.
Yep.
You know, so besides Fafhrd and Grey Mouser, who else were you kind of into? At least around that time, maybe not in the brig.
Fred Saberhagen had a wonderful book called The Book of Swords, and it had these 12 swords, and they all had, you know, like different properties, and so that was really good. And I even used some of the swords from that.
Oh, heck yeah!
And like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, and of course Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Ray Bradbury, and let's see, back then, books. Oh, all the Conan. I mean, I from one to
Robert E. Howard,
Robert E. Howard, all the 12, and then went on to Jordan and Carpenter and all the guys that did that, and so and then along with those lines, Robert E. Howard also did, you know, the other King Cole and what was his name? Cormac McCart.
Okay.
You know, and Red Sonja, and all the
good stuff.
Yeah. And so
beautiful.
So that was a lot of inspiration, you know, and so Michael Moorcock. Elric of Melnibonia, you know. And, oh man, that was one of my favorites. So
good stuff. Right on. This video was brought to you by the generous support of our patrons. Consider becoming a patron so you can help us make more content like this. Or get yourself a t-shirt below. Later.
All right, do this and do that and do this and do that. And watch this video.